Chapter 31. The Building Inspector for Cloud Architecture. Stand up, stretch, take a real break if you need one. This chapter is different from the ones before it. We've spent 30 chapters building up knowledge of specific services and patterns. Now we step back and look at the whole picture. What does good cloud architecture actually look like? Is there a systematic way to evaluate whether what you've built is genuinely well-designed or just functional? There is. AWS calls it the Well-Architected Framework. Nimbus had been running for 2 years. The team had made hundreds of architectural decisions, some consciously, some by accident, some under pressure. The system worked. But Maya had a question. Is our architecture actually good? She asked. Not just functional, good. No one answered immediately. Because I've been hearing about a well-architected review, she continued. AWS offers it to customers. Some of our investors mentioned it. I think we should do one. What is it? Leo asked. AWS's framework for evaluating cloud architectures, Priya said. 6 pillars, a set of questions and best practices for each. You assess your architecture against all of them and identify what's missing. It's like a building inspection, Tom said. You know the building works. The inspection tells you if it's code compliant and what might fail in an earthquake. The 6 pillars. The AWS Well-Architected Framework is organized around 6 pillars. Each pillar has a set of design principles, best practices, and questions to assess your architecture. 1. Operational excellence, focus. Running and monitoring systems to deliver business value and continually improving processes and procedures. Key areas. How do you deploy changes? CI/CD, infrastructure as code, automated deployments. How do you monitor the system and know when something is wrong? How do you learn from failures, postmortems, runbooks, blameless culture? How do you handle changes at scale? Nimbus assessment, present CI/CD pipeline with automated deployments, present CloudWatch alarms and guard duty, present quarterly chaos engineering tests. Warning, postmortem process not formalized, incidents were investigated, but learnings weren't systematically documented. 2. Security, focus. Protecting information, systems, and assets through risk assessment and mitigation strategies. Key areas. Who can access what, and with the least privilege possible? How is data encrypted at rest and in transit? How do you detect and respond to threats? Are there automated security controls? Nimbus assessment. Present IAM with least privilege after the cleanup in Chapter 14. Present KMS for data encryption, secrets manager for credentials. Present guard duty. WAF, Shield Standard. Present VPC with private subnets, security groups. Security patching on EC2 instances not fully automated. Priya flagged this months ago, not yet resolved. 3. Reliability. Focus. Ensuring a system performs its intended function correctly and consistently and is able to recover from failures. Key areas. How does the system handle failures at the component level? How does it recover from regional failures? How is demand managed? How is the system tested for failure? Nimbus assessment. Present multi-AZ for all critical components. Present Aurora serverless with automatic failover. Present auto-scaling for EC2 and ECS. Present chaos engineering tests quarterly. Warning, no multi-region deployment. Warn standby not yet implemented. Planned for next quarter. 4. Performance efficiency focus. Using IT and computing resources efficiently. Key areas. Is the right instance type and database type being used for the workload? Is scaling configured correctly? Is data delivered to users from the optimal location? Nimbus assessment. Present CloudFront for global content delivery. Present Elasticache for database read acceleration. Present Aurora read replicas. Present Lambda for appropriate workloads. Warning, some EC2 instances never been right-sized since initial deployment. 5. Cost optimization focus. Avoiding unnecessary costs. Key areas. Are resources appropriately sized? Are unused resources decommissioned? Are appropriate pricing models being used? Are spending anomalies detected? Nimbus assessment. Present savings plans implemented, Chapter 27. Present S3 lifecycle policies, Chapter 23. Present DynamoDB auto-scaling. Present AWS budgets with alerts. Present quarterly cost reviews. 6. Sustainability focus. Minimizing environmental impacts of running cloud workloads. Key areas. Is utilization maximized, avoiding idle resources? Are instance types chosen for energy efficiency? Is data stored only as long as needed? Nimbus assessment. Present. Lambda and Fargate for serverless containerized workloads. Better resource efficiency than dedicated EC2. Present. S3 lifecycle policies. Delete data when no longer needed. Warning. Some Graviton-based instances not yet adopted. AWS Graviton is more energy efficient and cheaper. The well-architected review process. The review isn't a test you pass or fail. It's a structured conversation about your architecture, guided by 60-plus questions across the 6 pillars. Each question identifies a best practice. If your architecture follows it, that's a strength. If it doesn't, it's an issue. Categorized by risk level: high, medium, low. The output: a prioritized list of improvement recommendations. Not everything needs to be fixed immediately. The framework helps you understand the trade-offs of each gap and decide what to address first. AWS's well-architected tool, available in the AWS console, free, provides the question framework and generates a report with recommendations. For Nimbus, Maya scheduled a half-day workshop. All 4 team members reviewed each pillar together. By the end, they had a list of 12 issues: 3 high-risk, 5 medium-risk, 4 low-risk. High-risk issues: 1. No multi-region DR plan, reliability. 2. EC2 security patching not automated, security. 3. No formal incident response process, operational excellence. Medium-risk issues: 5 items including no Graviton adoption, some EC2 instances not right-sized, no formal runbook for database failover. Low-risk issues: 4 items, including CloudFront cache hit rate could be higher with tuned TTLs. A few security group rules, broader than necessary. The lens: specializing the review. The core well-architected framework is technology agnostic. AWS also publishes lenses, extensions of the framework for specific use cases or industries. Serverless lens: additional questions for Lambda-heavy architectures. SaaS lens: for multi-tenant SaaS applications. Machine learning lens: for ML training and inference workloads. Financial services lens: regulatory and compliance questions for fintech. Healthcare lens: HIPAA considerations. For Nimbus, the SaaS lens was relevant. It added questions about tenant isolation, onboarding automation, and per-tenant cost allocation, all areas Nimbus was actively developing. The difference between well-designed and just working. Our system works, Leo said after the review, but I didn't realize how many things we'd done good enough and moved on. That's normal, Priya said. Building under time pressure means you make pragmatic choices. The well-architected review is the scheduled time to revisit them. Some of these gaps seem obvious in retrospect, he continued. The security patching, I knew we hadn't automated it. I just never prioritized fixing it. Because it works and it's well-architected feel the same day to day, Maya said. The difference only becomes visible when something goes wrong. This is one of the most important things a senior engineer understands. The absence of incidents doesn't mean the absence of risk. It means the risk hasn't triggered yet. Infrastructure as code, the operational excellence enabler. One theme across multiple pillars. Infrastructure as code, IAC. If your infrastructure is configured manually through the console, then recreating it in a DR scenario is slow and error-prone. Auditing changes is impossible. Who changed what and when? Rolling back a bad change requires manual reversal. Consistency between environments, dev, staging, production, requires discipline. AWS CloudFormation lets you define infrastructure in YAML JSON templates. AWS CDK, Cloud Development Kit, lets you define infrastructure using programming languages: Python, TypeScript, Java. Terraform is a popular third-party alternative. Nimbus had been gradually moving to IAC using Terraform. By the time of the well-architected review, about 60% of their infrastructure was defined in code. The review recommended getting to 100%. Why the remaining 40%? Leo asked. The remaining 40% is where our critical infrastructure lives, Priya said. If we can't recreate it from code, we can't recover from a regional disaster reliably. Strengths and limitations. What the well-architected framework does well. It gives teams a shared vocabulary for discussing architectural trade-offs, a language that survives personnel changes and vendor conversations. Running a well-architected review forces explicit acknowledgement of risks that are otherwise invisible. Yes, we know we had a single point of failure here. We accepted that trade-off because the cost of eliminating it exceeds the expected cost of the failure. That kind of documented, intentional trade-off is the output of a good review. What it cannot do: it describes properties of well-architected systems. It does not tell you how to build them. Checking every box in a well-architected review does not guarantee a good architecture. A system can be highly available, operationally excellent, cost-optimized, and still solve the wrong problem. The framework is a lens, not a blueprint. Use it to surface the right questions, not to answer them. Summary: the AWS Well-Architected Framework has 6 pillars: operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization, and sustainability. Each pillar has design principles and best practices evaluated through a structured question set. The well-architected tool, free in the AWS console, guides the review and generates a report. The output is a prioritized list of architectural improvements categorized by risk. Lenses specialize the framework for specific domains: serverless, SaaS, healthcare, ML. Infrastructure as code is a cross-pillar enabler, recommended by operational excellence, security, and reliability pillars. A well-architected review is not a pass-fail test. It's a structured improvement conversation. Exam tips: SAA-CO3, domain, cross-domain, all domains. Know all 6 pillars and their primary focus. The exam will describe a scenario, e.g., the team wants to ensure their system can recover from AZ failures, and ask which pillar it falls under. Reliability, pillar mapping. Deploy changes reliably, learn from failures, monitor. Operational excellence, IAM, encryption, network controls, threat detection, security, HA, failover, scaling, DR. Reliability, right sizing, CDN, right technology selection, performance efficiency, pricing models, unused resources, cost visibility, cost optimization, energy efficiency, resource utilization, data lifecycle, sustainability. Infrastructure as code, recommended by the framework for repeatability, auditability, and recovery. CloudFormation, CDK, and SAM are AWS native IAC tools. Well-architected tool, the AWS console tool that guides the review process, free to use, generates improvement plans. AWS Trusted Advisor, similar to the well-architected framework, but automated, scans your account and provides recommendations across cost, performance, security, and fault tolerance. The overlap is real. Trusted Advisor automates some of what the framework evaluates manually. Exercises: Exercise 1. Recall, name the 6 pillars of the AWS Well-Architected Framework and describe the primary concern of each in 1 sentence. Try to do this from memory. If you struggle, that's useful information about which pillars need more attention. Exercise 2. Exam practice scenario. An engineering team is preparing for a well-architected review. Their application runs on EC2 with RDS multi-AZ. Recently, they discovered that their deployment process sometimes leaves EC2 instances with different library versions, configuration drift. They have no automated alerting when the RDS failover is triggered. Their IAM users all have administrator access. They haven't tested their backup restoration process in 14 months. Map each issue to the most relevant well-architected pillar. A. Configuration drift, operational excellence. No RDS failover alerting, reliability. Administrator access, security. No backup restoration test, reliability. B. Configuration drift, security. Performance efficiency, administrator access, operational excellence. No backup restoration test, cost optimization. C. Configuration drift, reliability. No RDS failover alerting, performance efficiency. Administrator access, security. No backup restoration test, operational excellence. D. Configuration drift, security. No RDS failover alerting, reliability. Administrator access, cost optimization. No backup restoration test, security. Hint 1. Configuration drift in deployment process. Which pillar covers deployment practices? Hint 2. Administrator access for all users. Which pillar covers access control? Hint 3. Backup restoration not tested. Which pillar covers testing your recovery mechanisms? Answer: A. Explanation. Configuration drift in deployments. Inconsistent environments is an operational excellence issue. It's about reliable, consistent deployment practices. No alerting on RDS failover, means you don't know when HA mechanisms are triggered. A reliability issue, knowing your system's health. Administrator access for all users violates least privilege, a security issue. Untested backup restoration means your reliability mechanisms DR are unverified. Why not B? B misassigns configuration drift to security. Inconsistent library versions are a deployment operations problem, not a security threat, and administrator access to operational excellence. Access control is a security concern, not an ops process. Why not C? C correctly places administrator access in security, but misassigns configuration drift to reliability. Deployment consistency is operational excellence, and untested backup restoration to operational excellence. Recovery testing is a reliability concern. You're verifying that your system can recover, not that your processes are consistent. Why not D? D assigns administrator access to cost optimization. Overly broad permissions have nothing to do with cost. And untested backup restoration to security. Not being able to restore a backup is a reliability failure, not a security vulnerability. SAAC 03 Domain, Cross-Domain Exercise 3. Architecture Challenge Optional. Conduct a mini well-architected review of an application you know or are building. For each of the 6 pillars, write down one thing the application does well, one thing the application could improve. Then rank your improvement items by risk. What's most likely to cause an incident or waste, and priority. What would have the biggest impact if fixed? This exercise is more valuable than it might seem. The practice of systematically evaluating architecture from multiple angles is a core senior engineer skill. Post-credit scene. 3 weeks after the well-architected review, the team had implemented the 3 high-risk fixes. EC2 patching was now automated via AWS Systems Manager Patch Manager. An incident response process document existed. Not perfect, but written and shared. The multi-region warm standby plan was drafted and scheduled for implementation next quarter. Priya reviewed the well-architected tool report. The high-risk count, 0. Medium risk, 3. Low risk, 4. We're in better shape than we were, she said. Is that good? Leo asked. It's progress, she said. You don't finish a well-architected review. You make progress, then you review again in 6 months. We've spent 31 chapters learning individual AWS services, she said. And now we're starting to look at the whole system, which is how architects think. We've been thinking like architects for a while, Leo said. We've been making architectural decisions, Maya said. That's different. Thinking like an architect means you evaluate decisions before making them, not after. What's the difference? Tom asked. In the next chapter, she said, we try to answer that. In the next chapter, what a real architecture review looks like, from first principles.